In the pantheon of video games, there are many characters whose stories must be told, and amongst these, few characters catch the eyes and hearts of as many gamers as Ken Masters. Making his debut in Street Fighter as the secondary character to Ryu, it was in the Street Fighter II sub-series of games where Ken stepped out of Ryu's shadow and became not just a fully fledged character in his own right, but a true gaming legend. Welcome to Saber Jewel Gaming, and welcome to the story of Ken in Super Street Fighter II. Despite being identified within the game as American, Ken was actually raised in Japan by his Japanese father and half Japanese, half American mother. During his childhood, Ken's parents had a number of issues and nearly separated. During this time, they neglected Ken, and Ken turned to a life of delinquency, dyeing his hair blonde in protest. The changes in Ken's appearance and behaviours certainly hit home to his family, with them realising the impact that their neglect was having on him, and the two were able to settle down and re-establish a strong family unit for Ken. Ken, however, chose to keep the blonde hair as a constant reminder of the fragility and importance of a strong family bond. Perhaps related to his time of delinquency, at 12 years old, Ken was sent by his father to train under his best friend, Guken. Ironically enough, it would be here where Ken would make his own best friend, that in Ryu. Over the next 10 years, the two would train together every day, becoming closer than brothers, if also strong rivals to each other. It was only in their early 20s, when their master decided that both of them were fully trained, that they separated, with Ryu going to Thailand and Ken moving formally to the United States. Whilst in the United States, Ken would compete in numerous competitions, becoming one of the finest fighters in the world. It was during this period that he met a young woman called Aliza, who would become his girlfriend. Whilst Ryu is often seen as the more serious fighter, with Ken coming across as far more arrogant and flamboyant, it's often overlooked that Ken is actually a very strong and honourable family man. And it was because of this that he actually began to step away from fighting. Settling down with Aliza, he didn't want to relive the experience of his parents and wouldn't let anything come between them, especially if they were to have children. It was only on receiving a letter from Ryu, in which Ryu chronicled his success and training for martial arts competition, that Ken began to realise how much he missed this and how much he missed his competitive nature with Ryu. Ken knew that until he put this competitive streak behind him, he'd never be able to fully settle down, and so made a pact that he would not marry Aliza until he had beaten Ryu in one-on-one competition. It was with this in mind that Ken began training and entered the World Warriors tournament. Whilst for many this was about fame, glory or revenge, for Ken it was all about family. This became even more true whilst fighting Guile, whose own wife is actually the sister of Aliza. Whilst the two get on very well, Guile very clearly had reservations about Ken, but these reservations certainly didn't stop him from respecting him, especially after they fought in one-on-one competition during the World Warrior tournament. But for Ken, the entire focus of this tournament was finally coming face to face with his best friend, Ryu. Ken knew that his own family had been on the verge of collapse as a child, and he didn't want to let his own arrogance, his own competitive nature, to be the reason that their family would separate. He needed to beat Ryu and put his competitive streak behind him, and the World Warrior tournament allowed him to do just that. Whilst Ryu was often the most focused trainer and the most dedicated fighter, Ken knew that he was fighting not just for victory, he was fighting for a family, and with this he was able to beat Ryu. Having defeated Ryu, Ken was the most focused he had ever been. He wanted to win the tournament and was able to go on and defeat some of the greatest warriors the world had ever seen. But when facing M. Bison, his only focus was in finally putting an end to the man's evil tyranny, as he had become well aware of M. Bison's villainy beyond the tournament. With no ulterior motive such as revenge to cloud his judgment, Ken Masters was able to do what most people considered impossible and overcome the psycho power of M. Bison, and not only defeat the tyrannical leader of Shadaloo, but finally put an end to his tyranny and win the World Warriors Tournament. But this was not the end. At the moment of his victory, it transpired that Eliza had travelled to Thailand to watch him win. And now, with the victory over Ryu and all other obstacles behind them, they were able to settle down and form that perfect family that Ken had always craved. The two were married and were able to live on happily ever after. Ken Masters is one of the most often misunderstood characters in all of gaming history, but he is one who will always take the high ground.